Pat Jankiewicz, a writer, actor, probably many other things I haven't mentioned, was cool enough to talk with me. He checked out the movie Remy's Demons and whatever else, and he's been around the horror world forever. So I just thought it'd be awesome, Pat, to like talk to you, because like it's rare for someone like me to get to meet and talk to someone like you. It has such a wealth of knowledge and everything in the horror world. So like, just real quick, like people checking this out, like tell them about yourself and your background.
I'm from Detroit, Michigan. I currently reside in Southern California. I've written for Fangoria magazine. I write for Star Wars Insider. I write for Star Trek Monthly. I've written for Wizard. I wrote for Starlog, Comic Scene. I write for Infinity. I write for Dark Days. I started out, I was kind of a teenage set crasher. I got a SAG card writing a commercial for David Lynch with my two brothers. And from there, I've done over 35 commercials. I've written over 400 articles. I've interviewed everyone from, I've interviewed Sam Raimi, Christopher Nolan, Francis Ford Coppola, Nicolas Cage, Natalie Portman, and a gazillion other people, you know, and I've written for Marvel Comics. I've retold Aunt May's origin in Wisdom and Wheat Cakes, if anyone ever read that. Let's see, I've done a little bit of a lot of stuff. I've done some horror movies, some of which I'm lucky enough to have on Amazon Prime. I played Bigfoot last in the recently released, you can find it on Amazon Prime. I eat the biggest names in the cast. I'm not going to tell you if you haven't seen it, but it's on Amazon.
What's the movie called?
Hoax.
Hoax.
Yes.
Is that who is the director on that?
The director was the multi-talented Colorado citizen, former second unit director, Matt Allen.
Oh, nice. Okay. That's awesome. Yeah, I think I've seen that poster on Amazon Prime.
It's kind of an homage. The red one, you'll see me in my ape suit on the O. It's with, well, I'm going to say the guy from Farscape, which I know he hates. Also, Brian Thompson, who, of course, to get to kill somebody who was killed by Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger was kind of an honor.
That's awesome.
Trying to think what else. So if you're near, I mean, if you're lucky enough to have an open Barnes & Noble, which haven't been open in a while, but I think they're open for the first time this week. I'm in the new, I have a great interview in the new Star Trek. I interview Henriette Ivanans, a wonderful Canadian lady. She went through multiple kidney transplants, and to me, it was a great story because her family bonding together to save her made it. I mean, I cover all her Star Trek stuff and all her Canadian work, but the real point of the story, I thought, was her family loving her enough to jump in and help her out, you know?
Wow, that sounds incredible. And you wrote about Jaws, correct?
I did. I'm sorry. I've written about 3 books. My first one being Just When You Thought It Was Safe, a Jaws Companion, which I'm very lucky. My sales always spike in the summer. We're going into 4th of July weekend, so the sales are going to be very high. Every time there's a Jaws marathon, God bless, people run to Amazon Prime, God bless them, and they order my freaking book. If you have the book, watch the Jaws marathon. I think AMC does one and a bunch of other channels. If you have my book during the HBO Jaws marathon, you'll be in luck, you know, because they'll have all the weird facts that you don't know about all 4 movies.
Yeah, and so you and I bonded over text last week about when I first started my career, I was an union assistant camera assistant, and I focus puller. And
on my 600 pound, you were on my 600-pound life as well. You worked on my 600-pound life.
Yeah, I still do on and off. Yeah. And
but I want you to finish that story. But before you do, I just want to say, your resume is a who's who of reality TV. I was really impressed.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. That's I've been a camera. You know, I started out in film doing camera, so I got into that. And like I said, I mean, back then, when I worked with Bill Butler, the cinematographer shot Jaws was in, I believe 2000, the year 2000. And it was amazing. And we actually shot the movie I worked with him on was on Nantucket. Him and I didn't bond that we were like best friends or anything, but like I'm a film historian. I love everything, and so I would just sit with him at lunch and ask him stories about Jaws, everything actually, all the movies he had done. I was always a big 1941 fan of Spielberg's growing up.
Amazingly underrated that movie, you know.
Yeah, and he shot that, so I would just be like, oh, what'd you do with this, and and one of the things I loved about this is like a kind of nerdy inside cinematography thing. But you know how like film stocks are rated, like, you know, the ISO on a film stock, just like photo.
Yeah.
So you learn as you're learning about cinematography, you learn about, you know, how to push and pull a film stock, which means you're overrating it or underrating it. So I one day I walked over to Bill on a set, and we were shooting with 200 ISO film stock, and he goes, I go to him because I was trying to show off. I wanted him to be impressed by me.
No.
So I go, Bill, what are you rating this at? And he looks at me, he goes, what does Kodak say to rate it at? And I go, oh, what? And he's like, look. Yeah, he goes, look, I rate it whatever the fuck the people who make it say to rate it. And he's just like, I was like, okay. I walked away. And it was just a lesson.
You were trying to entice him into a conversation, and he responded the way any DP should.
But anyway, I'm sorry I've been talking. But yeah, I mean, so you write a lot, and you wrote, you know, about Jaws, which is a masterpiece. What about what about horror writing and criticism or interviews and stuff? Like, what brought you to doing that kind of thing?
Well, I was a teenage set crasher. When we came out from Detroit, I started crashing movie sets. And, you know, I was always a horror nerd, so I started crashing horror movie sets. And the director, you know, the directors would sit down with you. You know, I had no connections. I would lie and say I was covering it for a horror magazine, usually Fangoria, because I was reading Fangoria as a kid. And I remember the director would sit down, and the interview was actually going to go into my high school paper, but they think they're talking to Fangoria, which is terrible. But, you know, they would sit down, and I would hear the best stories. I mean, you would sit down with these Albert Pune and people like that would sit you down and start telling you stories about these sets, and I just loved it. You know what I mean? I mean, you'd spend the weekend watching gore, watching fight scenes, watching naked female zombies. It was just the best experience you could possibly have. I mean, I remember my father and mom were my brother Donald and I would do this together. We'd have to find an older kid with a driver's license who would get the sets. And when that happened, I remember my father saying, I don't wake up until 10 a.m. on Saturday, so if you get yourselves arrested, you and your brother don't call home till 10 a.m. And I remember I took that as a tacit endorsement from Tony Jankiewicz, my father. You know what I mean? I mean, as long as you don't get arrested, and if you could fake it through the night, I've always been kind of tall. So I was always taller than the people I was talking to, even as a teenager. So when they usually assumed, you know, they see the baby face and stuff, but I would be convincing them I'm one of the youngest writers, 25, you know. I knew they would be on me about halfway through the set. I remember I became friends with the Kyoto brothers as a kid because on one of the sets, one of them walked up to me, and I remember him saying to me, he goes, "You're not supposed to be here." And I looked at him and like sheer terror, like, "How did you know?" And he said, "It's 3 o'clock. We're getting paid shit. Nobody is having a good time, and you're the only one here at 3 a.m. who's smiling," because it was my first or second film set, you know, and you know, I mean, it was fantastic, and I haven't lost that. Whenever I book something or anything, the first thing I do is the first thing I did as a kid. I go to Crafty, I get a big hot cup of coffee from Craft Services. I grab a donut, and I just take a minute, no matter what it is. If it's a movie I'm cast in, if it's a movie, if it's a commercial I'm starring in, if it's a set I'm covering, a commercial I'm, you know, because in commercials, the character guy is always the lead guy, you know, or one of them. So I get a cup of coffee, and I grab a donut, and I just think for a minute how lucky I am to be there, you know?
Wow. That's great.
I mean,
That's amazing. You would.
What was your first set like?
My first set.
Please, I want to hear it.
So what happened to me was, it was kind of weird. I started doing production assistant work out of college. I was still in college.
Wow, you're a PA. Is
Yeah,
this coffee hot? You tell me.
and so I was doing that, and so like a little. What I started doing is they would what's called day playing. They would just I worked for this company that would hire out production assistants and sound men and all kinds of stuff. And in New York, whenever like a big movie came, they always picked up scraggler kind of PAs for days, 2 days, 5 days. So I get this call.
Because they would burn you out. They would burn you out before. They didn't want to burn out their normal guys. You would be babysitting the biggest a-hole in production.
Well, what happened was, like I said, like I was doing these day play gigs, and so these, as you know, these movies are massive. One of the first one was Snake Eyes with Nicolas Cage. And then,
wow,
yeah.
Where were you shooting? Vegas or New York?
No, that was in Atlantic City. That was
wow, really?
Yeah.
Oh, they were faking it.
Yeah, it was. They had taken over an entire high school football field for the. Remember when the tidal wave comes, like the flooding? Well, that was all done on this massive. They just took over a whole football field. The ILM had all these green screens up for like hundreds of feet. It was insane. I had never seen anything like. When I got there, I was like, oh my God. But what happened a lot of times with my position was, I'm the low man on the totem pole, right? I show up, and half the time, nobody knew why I was there, and nobody knew what to do with me. So
which makes you harder to fire, by the way.
I know. And so I would show up, and they would be, so the story I was going to tell you real quick is that, like, I show up to Philadelphia, right? I get this call, be at the office at 4:30 in the morning. You got to be in Philly at like 6:30, which is like a 2-hour drive. So I go, okay, fine. They give me a van. I drive down to Philly. Same thing. It's at a high school. I go into high school. I'm walking around. I keep going. Everyone I talk to, I'm like, I'm Colin Bressler. I'm a PA. I'm here for the day. Put me to work. And I loved it back then. You know, I was like, yeah, put me to work. I'll do whatever. And everybody would just phone me up. Go ask Charles. And I'd go to Charles, and Charles be like, I don't know, go ask Kim. I'd go to Kim, and so after a while, I just said, you know what, I don't even care. I'm just gonna, and I walked around the set. Now here's the thing, I didn't know what the name of the movie was because it was secret, right? Nobody would disclose, and a low man on the totem pole, they wouldn't tell me. So halfway through the day, all I've been doing all day is watching them film. Nobody's told me what to do. So I look over. De
Palma's gonna find you. De Palma's gonna find you.
No, this is it. This is a different movie. I'm about to.
Really?
Yeah. So there's a script on the table. So I grabbed the script, and nobody's talking to me. So I start reading. I read the whole script, and I go, that was a piece of crap. I throw it off, right? And I swear to you, about 6 months later, my brother's at a movie in New York. He lived with me at the time. He's watching this movie, and now you have to understand, when I got home, he asked me, what was the movie? So I told him the movie. I told him the story of the movie, right? So he's sitting in a movie theater watching a movie about a kid and a psychologist played by Bruce Willis.
You were on the set of Sixth Sense. You thought
I didn't even know what it was.
That script was Oscar nominated. You thought it was crap? Wow.
I literally was like, I don't even understand what I read. That was so, like, I was like, what the hell was? Now here, understand this. Like, I was supposed to be working. It's not like I was reading it like this. Also, the script, like, you know, remember that whole thing is about getting you to, at the end where it's, I see dead people, and like, in, you know,
the twist ending. Yeah.
And in the script, it was done in this way that if you're not really paying attention to the script, the end doesn't make any sense. It's not like a movie. So I think I must have missed things in the middle So my brother's in the Sixth Sense, and he's watching, and halfway through he remembers what I told him 6 months ago, and he goes, ah! So forever, my brother's...
you know, it's funny because your brother, but when you saw the movie, I mean, do you get a credit in Sixth Sense?
I think so, yeah. I think somewhere in the PAs, somewhere down on the 800 PA list or something.
That's hilarious. That's perfectly hilarious.
I've never checked, by the way. Maybe I didn't. I mean, I was only on for like 2 days, so maybe not, you know. I mean, it was funny because day 2, I actually had lunch with Tak Fujimoto, the DP, because I just...
Yeah, also shot Breakfast Club.
I know, and I just decided to sit with him, and like it was that's funny because his dad was visiting that day, so I sat with him and his father at lunch, and I'm like, "What film stock are you using?" I'm like that kid, you know.
But
But
that's
anyway,
cool. No, that's cool. I mean, it's stories like that. I remember I was on one set, and the DP wasn't having a good time, and one of the Dana Kazunikov, a really cool AD, grabs my arm and she goes, "You are going to make someone's day." Because I was talking to her about all the stuff. I knew everybody's bio, just by looking at them. And when it was time for lunch, I won't say the movie, but it's a great story. He sits down and he's been screwed today. He's been having a bad day. He's not getting along. So she goes. The AD walks up to him and says, "Dean, do you remember what you were doing in 1976?" And he goes, "No." And she goes, "Ask Pat, he'll tell you." And I mentioned Rock and Roll High School, The Creature from Black Lake. And so I wound up having a long, leisurely lunch, basically talking to Dean Cundy, and
wow.
Dean Cundy told me everything. I mean, he introduced me to Ray Stella, his camera operator. And it was just such a wild, wonderful afternoon, you know what I mean? I mean, to me, the best part on a film set, whether you're working on it or not, is just, people always tell you your first hour is the most exciting and then everything else is boring. I find the mundane the most interesting. I mean, when you're on a low budget movie that's falling apart because the director and the producer aren't getting along, or when you're on a set where, low budget movies where big budget movies where it's the day Spielberg visits, or low budget movies the day the budget is almost through, how are they going to save the movie? I find that the most exciting thing of all. I find it really, really exciting to be on it, just to watch the minutia. I love the minutia. I do a lot of creatures and movies and commercials, and so when I do that, I'm just honored to be in the makeup chair. To have somebody like Michael Westmore of Star Trek and everything else doing your makeup, and you're asking about Rocky, or you're asking him about Rambo, or you're asking about all the other 1,000 movies he's done. My first screen credit was in a movie that Bill Butler was the DP on, and Roy Arbogast was doing the mechanical effects, and they have this mechanical dog. So I'm getting all these stories from Bill Butler. Bill Butler had to light my scene, and because my scene involved dogs, it took forever for them to shoot it. So I was talking to Bill Butler about Jaws and everything else all week long. I mean, the guy shot Anaconda. It was before he did that, but the guy shot Anaconda, the guy shot Grease, the guy shot all the Rockies. He did Rocky IV, which he made look like German expressionism, the one with Drago, the first one with Drago. And you're asking about getting that Russian look, and he's really excited and explaining to you. I mean, people don't know. Bill Butler friggin' shot the hospital scene for The Godfather. He was asked to step in. He was asked to step in for, I think, Storado, who, had some family thing come up. So Bill Butler shot the outside of the hospital scene in The Godfather.
Well, no, even more. He that's all I was going to tell you.
The scene with the mom, right?
No, the horse head. He shot that.
Really?
Yes. I swear to you, Nathan Swingle, if you're out there, it's my dear friend of mine. He was on that film set I was telling you about. We were at lunch, and I'm not kidding you. Tim McNulty was there too, another friend of mine. We were all part of the camera crew. He goes, we're just kind of picking his brain about film history and the experiences he's had. And he goes, he asked me, I think he goes, who do you like? What DPs do you like? And I was like, oh, well, I mean, oh my God, I just literally had a brain fart. Who was the guy that shot The Godfather? Jesus.
Victoria, was it Storado or was it?
No, New York guy. God, this is terrible. I'm sorry.
Hold on, I know this.
I'm deeply offended by myself because he's one of the greatest cinematographers, if not the greatest of all time. And anyone listening or watching are gonna punch us, but especially me. But anyway, I it'll come to me. But he goes, yeah. He goes, we were both in the ASC and we were good friends. And he goes, he didn't like to fly. The guy that shot the movie. He goes, oh, he didn't like to fly. And it was the only shoot They shot in L.A. And at the time, Bill Butler lived in L.A. And he called up and said, "Hey, can you cover for me and shoot this scene?" So, but here's the thing: he's telling us, these schmuck kids. Well, I was like 24 at the time. He's telling me and my crew, or the crew I worked on, and he's saying it like you and I would say about, I don't know, some random, like you would tell me about some, article you wrote, 8 years ago that you barely even remember or whatever. He's telling us about like one of the most famous scenes in film history, as if it's like, and he goes like this. He goes, yeah. I remember it was on The Godfather. It was like something about like a guy wakes up with a horse, a head of a horse in his bed.
Whoa! He was there when Bill Butler shot them finding Khartoum's head in the bed. Holy crap! He didn't tell me that. I knew about 100%. The hospital scene from it. Wow! I mean, the thing with Bill, and again, and on this dog movie, and all week ask him questions. And then I interviewed him at length for my book, and he was really sweet. He had a really wonderful wife, Iris, and they had and their daughter Genevieve was running around. But with Bill Butler, when you look at his credits, he goes all the way back to Death Dealer with Robert Corey and the Count Yorgos. He shot the Count Yorgos.
Wow.
And I mean, it meant nothing to him. I mean, the guy shot friggin' Grease. So when you're asking him about the Yorgos and the Death Dealers, all I could remember is what a pain in the ass the whole budget was. You know what I mean? And the great thing, I mean, he had this beautiful place in Marina del Rey, and you're asking him, does Bill still live in California?
I have no idea.
Okay. But, I mean, I remember asking him about Sniper. He did that amazing effect that's been stolen many, many times since, where he followed the sniper bullet going through the air. And he got the idea to remember, Sniper is long after all his greatest films. And Sniper is kind of a mediocre movie, but it has this great effect in it that he does that's been stolen since. He took a bullet. He took the bullet, put it on a piece of plexiglass, spun the plexiglass so it looked like the bullet was whizzing through the air. I mean, that's old school, man. To come up with that sort of genius solution. I loved when he did Luis Losa's Anaconda, and he redid his jaw shots of slithering through the water. It's just great stuff,
Yeah. Nah, he was
I love
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
War stories. No, after you. I love, like you, I love hearing the war stories,
Oh yeah, no, me too. Absolutely. Nah, it's amazing. I mean, film is it's such a. I always used to talk about it in film school about like you're going to like a minor psychological war every time you're setting out to make a movie.
It is, and it's kind of exciting to see how everybody deals with it,
Yeah, and you got to, and like someone in my shoes, with the stuff that I've been doing lately is like, you have so little budget, if any, and so you just have to think on your feet constantly. It's just always like, you're like, all right, fine, we don't have that. It says that in the script, but we don't have it. So let's figure out an angle, another angle. Like what else could be scary? And I mean, even on Remy's Demons, there was moments where like I realized I was like, this scene should be scary. We need to make this scene scary. And we'd like stand around, and me and the crew and the actors, we'd all come up with ideas. How can we make this scarier? Oh man, put someone over there. Whatever, I mean, that's what it's all about. But I think is like in most parts, that doesn't even end on a big budget movie. Even on a big budget movie, they're still doing that. I mean, they're still, you read books or hear about like Apocalypse Now or The Godfather or whatever, and you hear about these stories about on set, even Coppola or Spielberg or whatever, going through and going, you know what are we going to do here? Or the beginning of Apocalypse Now, that whole Martin Sheen thing was all kind of almost real, like, from what I've understood.
And by the way, do you know that's not even Martin Sheen doing the voiceover? That's his brother, Joe Estevez.
Really? No, I didn't know.
Oh,
that.
yeah. I've seen Joe at SAG and stuff, and you hear Joe talking. My God, that's him, Saigon. Martin Sheen had a heart attack, so he was in no condition to do it. That's that's Joe Estevez, his brother, doing the entire monologues you hear throughout the film.
Wow.
And obviously they couldn't give him credit, but that's an amazing performance. You don't even see him. He's talking over his brother.
Wow, that's amazing. I did not know that at all. Wow, that's incredible. In the like thinking of time, because I don't want to keep too much of your time. I love to add. I mean, were you able to see Remy's Demons and sort of like in a general sense too, like talk about like your experiences with like no budget filmmaking and these kind of films and your feeling about this kind of stuff.
Well, one, I liked it. Two, I didn't watch it. I don't consider myself having seen it because I had to watch it on my phone. You know what I mean? So I feel that's not fair to you or the movie. You know what I mean? I mean, the optimal would be to see it. You need to see it on, especially something like that. You need to see it on IFC at midnight. You need to see it with the lights out. I liked it, but I don't feel it got a fair shake from my phone. That makes sense?
Yeah,
I hate that when the only way you can watch something is on your phone. It's not a fair. I mean, you turn the phone sideways to give it full screen and stuff. But I feel the movie. I don't feel I've seen it until I've seen it at least on a TV screen. You know what I mean? It's not fair. I liked it, but I don't feel I watched it because I think I would have jumped more. I jumped a couple times, but I would have jumped more had it been a wider screen. You know what I mean? I mean,
yeah,
it's just 3D. If you watch Jaws 3D on TV, it's the same crap print that looks like they spilled milk all over it. It's the 3D print. Universal never bothered fixing it. But you see Jaws 3D at a midnight screening on Hollywood Boulevard, like I did last year, and you see it in its actual 3D. The thing's a blast. It's a 50s monster movie, and
wow.
I feel bad. But watch it on, it's a big 50s monster movie. It's it's Revenge of the Creature. You know what I mean? You don't get that on TV. The TV print is awful. But if you see it with a crowd on Hollywood Boulevard in friggin' 3D the way God and Joe Alves intended. And that's when you get the movie at its full strength. Like Remy's Demons, that's a great midnight movie. You deserve to be watching that on IFC with the lights out. That's when Remy's Demons will get its fair shake. I liked it. But again, I hate watching stuff on my phone because it's not the way to watch a movie,
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, you're right. 100%. I think it was David Lynch or someone was like, don't dare put my movies in a format to watch on like a phone. He was like pretty standoffish about that.
He's an interesting cat. He'll tell you the truth. You know what I mean? You ask about certain things, but he talks like your Uncle Jerry. He's very friendly and avuncular. It's not the guy you'd be getting these sexually dangerous movie ideas out of. You know what I mean?
Oh, really? I never met him or anything.
He's a very sweet guy. He looks and sounds like my Uncle Jerry, so I liked him a lot. You know what I mean? But he's golly and stuff. He doesn't swear in real life, at least not when I was around him, and I thought that was really cool. And even when he lost his temper at a hair on the gate or something, he was like, golly, can't we get this right? I thought, wow. On the David Fincher sets, golly never comes up.
Yeah, I missed the hair in the gate thing on some levels.
That would be your ass, by the way.
Yeah.
Aren't you the guy whose head gets chopped if that happens?
Oh, yeah. That and any buzzing in the focus, all that kind of stuff was, yeah. I was a loader. I did film loading. I second AC'd and then I first AC'd. So, like, yeah, I love it. I loved it. I really loved it. I got really into it and kind of got into the art form of, like, being able to judge distances by eye. I did a lot of indie films and things like that on film. And it was just cool. Like I remember the challenge, and me and other ACs would actually set standards and see if we could, all right, that guy, follow him and be on New York City on the street. Just like follow that guy, keep him in focus. And someone would watch through the viewfinder and be like, no, you lost him. And just stuff like that was so much fun. Or just measuring things, I lost that ability, but I used to be able to know like that door is 12 feet away from me, like just by eye, And I did some Steadicam stuff. I love that. Like acing, focus pulling for Steadicam was so cool. The challenge of that constant movement.
I've done boom work. And a friend was doing a low budget short last year, and I haven't done boom work in a while. I would do boom work on low budget stuff. I mean, when we take a gig on a low budget thing, I remember shooting something in Griffith Park where I was the extras coordinator, and that was the worst. It was like herding cats. You know what I mean? You've
Oh
got
God.
drums and
Yeah.
drums, and you're trying to keep them all in one area, and they're asking you the same stupid questions all night long. As a boom operator, I hadn't done boom in a while, and I really kind of dug it. I mean, I'd done boom before, but my friend, it was one of my dearest friends, and he asked me, and so I literally, I'm doing the boom on this, and this. So it was a female. It was a female protagonist horror short. I really enjoyed it. I hadn't done that in a while. Doing the boom, getting the boom easily. I'm 6'9", so getting the boom out of the
Yeah.
frame and over everyone's heads where it should be is perfect. And,
Yeah, you're perfect.
but yeah, but I missed that low budget Joy de Vivre where you're all together, you're shooting the short, and of course it's raining and everything else you don't want happening. And I just had a blast. I mean, it was a lot of fun. And I didn't even go to the screening. I was more happy with the experience of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like I mean, there's especially independent films. Like there's this the crew isn't super large, so you're kind of you're in this. A lot of I did a lot of independent films in New York when I lived there. I live in Texas now, but when I lived there and
What part?
I remember.
What part of Texas?
Oh, San Antonio.
Okay, cool. Continue. We'll go back to this.
Oh no,
go on.
Yeah, no. And so I just all those movies that I did, I just remember the bonds you would create with the crew, and because it wasn't that large, and you would spend 12 hours, 15, 16 hours a day together. I agree with you. And that's something I miss with the stuff I'm doing, because we don't shoot. I just can't afford to shoot 3 weeks straight. It would be awesome, and we'd all bond, and I think, for Jason, who played Remy, he would have an easier time to be able to live in Remy for 3 weeks straight and just play that character, as opposed to me being like, hey, you free to shoot for 3 hours tomorrow? Okay, let's go,
Yeah.
And that's, so I agree with you. You lose the way I'm doing stuff now, you lose that camaraderie that was so special back then, doing those kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I was a cast member in a low-budget teen sex comedy shooting in Palm Springs, and again, I just heard from somebody on it yesterday, and it's we probably haven't talked in a good 7 years, but I mean, this person after that experience in 110-degree weather shooting in Palm Springs all summer long, these people are combat veteran friends of mine. I mean. We can remember exactly where we were trying to finish this little POS, and you know what I mean? It was so charming, and I loved everybody on it. It was terrible, but I loved everybody on it. The director went through hell. I mean, the poor guy went through hell, and I have nothing but respect for him. You know what I mean? He's done some DP work stuff since, but I saw this guy got kicked by life on this thing. You know what I mean? I mean, towards the end, when the budget's running out, and that's when they're kind of pushing to the Hitler in the bunker, where, he and I, somebody in the crew was giving him such a hard time. He and I were roommates on the last, we haven't bunked with Pat. Pat likes everybody. You know what I mean? It's but he was a great guy, and he's trying to finish this movie right out of film school, and nobody was making it easy on him, and he was really. There's fun stuff in the movie, but I just remember, I would tell him the stories you and I were talking about before on the air. I would tell him something where Sam Raimi told me about working on Evil Dead. Something about, I remember I was getting the idea for my Jaws book and pulling together all my Jaws interviews, and I would mention one of the stories Bill Butler told me. One of the stories Bill Butler told me is Spielberg turned to him one day. And he said to Bill Butler, he goes, because Bill Butler and Spielberg had both done a lot for Universal Television. And he goes, it was the third week over budget, not making his shots and all this. And he turned to Bill Butler and he goes, so what do you think? And Bill goes, he was asking me if he was going to get fired. And he goes, because he knew the rule as soon as I did. He said the number one rule coming out of Universal was, if you fell behind a day, you got a call from the Black Tower. If you fell behind a week, there was someone else sitting in your chair. You know, basically because you couldn't cut it. And Spielberg turned to Butler and he was basically asking if the axe was going to fall. And as you point out, Bill Butler is very blunt. He'll tell you exactly what you want to know in exactly the language you would expect it. And he goes, Stephen, I don't think you have anything to worry about. He goes, it's been 3 weeks. They know you're battling the ocean. You know, they must like what you're doing. Otherwise, somebody else would be in the chair. You know the rule. And then Spielberg nodded, and then he goes, I did. I just wanted to hear you say it.
That's awesome. That's an amazing story. Well, to wrap up, because I don't want to keep you too much, give me one more anecdote, something from your career or writing that always sticks out to you about like filmmaking and everything, the process, or something someone told you, or.
Well, being on the set is the most important lesson you'll ever get. You know what I mean? I mean, being there and knowing at the right moment at the right time. You know what I mean? I mean, like you said, big budget movies are impersonal, but you'll see stuff on there you'll never see in a low budget movie. On low budget movies, as you with Remy and your other stuff, I mean, coming from reality, you know what I mean? You're coming from reality television. So all day long, I have no doubt you're dreaming about your own projects while doing yet another talking headshot for another reality show. But I mean, the stuff you were doing, because to me, you impressed me with the reality stuff, because you're doing that all day, so you know how to make a shot, you know how to do this, you know how to do that. But to me, one of the things that stays with me is something Sam Raimi told me. And Sam Raimi told me he would be the first person on the set and he would be the last one to leave. And he said he would have to buy the coffee. And he told me when they were shooting in Tennessee on the original Evil Dead, he got there first. And he said they learned a lot of hard lessons on that movie. And one of the hardest, he said, is the country people in Tennessee came down from the hills and stole some of their equipment. And he said he was lucky they left the stuff they needed to make the movie, because they're Tennessee people. They would take stuff that would have immediate impact on their lives, hammers and that sort of thing. But he would come down with the coffee. You have to buy all the coffee. And they were using the toilet in the cabin on Evil Dead. You know, again, this was such a low budget movie. He said he would personally pour some of the coffee into the toilet in the morning, and he would take a screwdriver and chip the ice out of the toilet bowl so the cast and crew could use it when they came in.
Wow.
And you're looking at this guy. This guy has done like $200 million Spider-Man movies. But you look at his face, and you can still see the Detroit native chipping away ice in a toilet bowl to make his first movie. That's an important lesson. Somebody like that doesn't forget their low-budget roots. That's why when you look at his Spider-Man movies, they're so much more energetic than all the other Spider-Man movies are just, the digital tricks and everything else. With Raimi, he's still doing camera tricks. There's a shot, he redoes one of his favorite shots from Darkman in Spider-Man. I think there's like 22 years between those shots. But there's an amazing shot where the Green Goblin blows up. And by the way, the guy the Green Goblin blows up was like his first AD, who he bumped up to a producer, between Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2. So the Green Goblin blows up the test pilot. And when the debris, the audience is waiting, as the debris starts to come down, it turns into all the graduation hats. That's an amazing shot. That's a Raimi shot. That's the same low-budget guy who chipped out the ice in the toilet bowl. You know what I mean? I mean, that's a guy who, even though he now has $200 million, he's still knocking himself out to do the stuff you expect of him,
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think that leaves you, I don't think if you've done movies where you've done it for $1 and you've done that, the ice concept that you mentioned, like, you know, and that's amazing. I think that's when you watch his movies, you see it in there, as opposed to someone who sort of came up through the process and got their first directorial debut on something rather large, you know, because they were an AD or they were in. Nothing wrong with that process, by the way. Just that it's different. The what?
Well, as a former PA, I'm sure you're all for that. but I mean, look at Remy's Demons. But look at, let me ask you again, because I'm also an interviewer, so I want to ask you some questions that you work. What was the hardest shot for you on Remy's Demons? I got 10 minutes. Let's do this. I'm curious about your stuff.
Wow,
what was the hardest shot for you? Seriously, think about it. All this time skipping and saving and getting it going. What was the hardest shot for you to accomplish on that?
I think that I'm trying. I mean, there's a lot of shoot days. I'm trying to think. I mean, I think that one of the hardest shots to do was actually there was, you know, that there's a shot where Regan's on the bed and she's kind of like this.
Nice homage, by the way, to Exorcist.
yeah, and she's there's a dolly in, and the thing is, I don't have anybody, right? Like I don't have a focus puller. I'm doing it all myself. So I had to I wanted the depth of field to be pretty shallow there. So like, and I'm moving in. So it's like moving in, I'm losing depth of field. I'm getting closer, and I had to focus pull, but also make sure the camera doesn't wiggle, on a slider. Off the top of my head, that was probably the hardest shot technically to pull off to get it to work right.
How long did it take you to get that shot?
Well, you know, I'm this guy, you know. I'm like,
yeah.
Because I have,
so you're a producer and director.
Everything, yeah. So I'm sitting there. I always make jokes when I'm on set because I'm the guy. I'm going up to the actors and I'm going, hey, okay, so here's what this scene's about. Let's get to the core of it, and we do this thing. But then I'm also I go like this. I turn around and I come back and go, all right, let's go, guys. We got to move. We got 10. You know, so I'm now the AD guy, the jerk that everyone hates, telling them to speed up. So like that probably about. I don't do more than 6 takes unless there's like it's just not working or I have time and I'm not happy, and I know there's always this voice in the back of my head that goes, Colin, I know you're in a rush and I know you've got a ton of things to shoot, but do you want to be in the edit suite and be angry because it's shit and you didn't get what you wanted?
Wow.
So I always have
By the way, you have to wear with that.
Yeah.
And it's a great shot. I knew exactly what you were talking about as soon as you were mentioning it. But you gave yourself time to get that shot. What is your favorite of your low budget stuff? And I know they're like your kids and you can't pick one, but at the same time, what was the one that was most difficult to pull off? Because your low budget stuff is good. It's effective. It's interesting. But what were some of your favorites of the past, your shorts and stuff?
Of like my shots in the movies?
Yeah.
My first short film is called Miguel Angel Jesus, which is on YouTube. On that movie, I had a little bit of a budget comparatively, and the great Jaron Blaschke shot it, who shot the movie Lighthouse with Willem Dafoe.
Oh wow!
Yeah, we went to film school together. Yeah, we were really close.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So he actually shot that movie, believe it or not.
That's amazing.
Well, the whole thing was in the movie. That movie just came to me. It's about 25 minutes long, and it's all about a character, this wacky character. But when I was designing the movie, I didn't want movement. I wanted like still images almost. I wanted just shots, and it's like the actor, the character moves around mise en scène, like in the shot, and there's no dolly moves. There's almost very little pans or tilts. It's just, so when Jared and I were designing the movie, I told him that out the gate. I said, I don't want camera moves. I want one shot, and I want him. It's all monologues. The whole movie is just a sequence of monologues. So there's stuff in there that I've always loved. Like visually, I think that obviously having a cinematographer like Jared, made it what it could be. I've since have never, I haven't, that's the last movie I ever worked with a cinematographer on, which is my sort of, bucket list thing going forward. Only because, as as we've talked about, I mean, having that collaboration and having the ability to talk to someone and to work on the visual impact of a story, it's just, it's an unbelievable thing to have,
Well, now, and in terms of that, again, you worked with one of the hit cinematographers too. Even to see the Spirit Awards, they did a complete parody of his shot style on IFC, which I thought was hilarious.
Really, I didn't see that.
Oh yeah. They had what's her name from Scott Pilgrim in drag as Willem Dafoe. It was very funny. But now, if you could do something for a higher budget, what was the one thing you would want to do? What project do you have that you're waiting for even better budget for?
I have 2 scripts that I wrote a long time ago that I've always dreamt of doing. One is called Lady on a Crescent Moon. It's kind of like it's a story of a small family immigrating from Mexico, but it's told through sort of the background was like Homer's Odyssey, and it's sort of got a horror. Wow. It's got a horror tinge to it as well. There's a lot of like supernatural stuff that happens in the story when they migrate through the desert. So that one I always kind of dream about. And then I wrote a script about my kind of a loosely based on my life called Interim Jesus. It's just about a guy kind of grew up in a very, doesn't have much of an identity, and the whole world sort of shapes his identity. But it's like he writes comic books, and there's this whole comic book stuff. And I dreamt up all these I wrote it in film school, and I dreamt up all these crazy visual stuff that I've always dreamed I wish I could do, because there's like crazy animation sequence. It's all about faith and like religion, and this guy sort of trying to figure out his place in all this. So, those are the 2 that come to mind.
Kind of your Scorsese piece.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that would be like the indie sort of like, personal story, I guess.
And it's cool. I mean, both the other one sounds a little bit like a genre version of Gregory Navarre. I think Gregory El Norte.
Yeah, and well, it's funny, when I wrote it, I right around the time I was finished writing Lady on the Crescent Moon, Pan's Labyrinth came out, and I was like, I was like, that's exactly like that's the genre. They're not similar they're not similar at all, but like visually, stylistically, the feel, they're very similar in that context. Story-wise, no, but I was like, when I saw Pan, I was like, okay, so if I made this film, I would make sure the DP saw that movie. I would make sure the editor saw that movie. Like, I'd be like, Pan's Labyrinth.
Couple times, and he's amazing. He would tell you, you would get little stories out of him, and one of my favorite stories is he says in Mimic, and remember in Mimic, the guy is listening to the Mexican radio, and Mimic, the grandfather at the beginning of Mimic is listening to the Mexican radio station.
I don't recall, but yeah, tell me what happens.
That's the director telling his wife how much he loves her in Spanish.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I thought Del Toro was telling his wife how much he loves her as the Spanish DJ, which I thought was really funny. You know what I mean?
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah,
I mean,
and he was but he was quite honest with me about how they butchered his movie, about how, and I'm thinking, if Weinstein could take the scissors to Mimic, and it's still a great movie, it shows you how talented he is,
Oh yeah, I really admire him on a lot. I've also I mean, you met him, but I have a friend who interviewed him as well and said he's like the nicest guy. He wouldn't leave. Like they talked about movies for like 2 hours after they were finished their interview.
Extremely good dude. I remember at Comic-Con, I was going through 50. Yeah, no, go on. Finish your friend's story. I'm sorry.
No, that was it. No, I was just saying he's just a really nice guy,
I was at Comic-Con, and I was going through my favorite thing. It's not on this year, obviously. But my favorite thing when I'm out of the roundtables, when I'm not doing one-on-one interviews and stuff, I like to go and find myself a big box of 50-cent comics for some trash reading material. You know what I mean? I mean, you're always looking for that issue of Man Wolf or Luke Cage or something that will just make your day for half a buck. And people kept smirking and taking pictures. You know, they're trying to be surreptitious. And I thought, oh, brother, you know, I thought, and this is my ego, I thought they were taking, oh, look at the giant going to the bin of crappy comics. And then I looked, and on both sides of the 50-cent bin, what they were taking the pictures of, on one side was Thomas Jane, who I guess loves 50-cent comics as well. On the other side was Del Toro. And they both had stacks of 50-cent books they were grabbing to read later. And I remember I really admired that. I really admired Del Toro. You know, he's there to publicize his project. But when he gets a chance, he went right out there to get his hands dirty on some 50-cent comics. I really admired that, you know. Thomas Jane too, you know.
That's really cool. Yeah, and that means a lot. Whenever you find out that these guys are nice people, it's always adds something to it, obviously. And it, like I said, I mean, you know, every movie I've done, like I kind of thread, like I try to sort of have the backbone of some movie that influenced me, you know. So in that script, it was definitely that Pan's Labyrinth. But each movie, I sort of like there's a textbook I like to work from, you know, like a movie, because I'm like you, I'm a film guy. You know, I just love movies. I love thinking about them, talking about them. So, well, man, I just want to tell you, thank you so much for your time. Like, this has been awesome. We got to do this again sometime.